We are watching all the reaction rolling in after the stunning first face-off between President Biden and former President Trump. We're also getting our first look at the candidates after the CNN presidential debate. You can see here backstage, Donald Trump did get a rousing applause from his team. Most analysts and a CNN flash poll showed Trump as the nice clear winner. And then President Biden visited a Waffle House in Atlanta, which hosted a debate watch party. Some of the headlines this morning, though, show Democrats alarmed with increasing calls to replace him. And here's the Washington Post this morning. Democrats panic over Biden's debate performance, doubt his future. This debate, obviously, as we know, Mark, could reshape the presidential race.
It appears that is exactly what's going to happen. Everyone's talking about it. The reactions continues to come in this morning. Jan, the overwhelming consensus from the CNN presidential debate from both sides. Former President Trump steamrolled President Biden. More post-debate fallout for the president, according to a CNN flash poll. These are the numbers we want you to look at this morning. Only 33% of registered voters said President Biden produced a better performance. Compare that to the 67% who said former President Trump did in that debate.
Renowned pollster Frank Luntz said, "My focus group of undecided voters wants Joe Biden to step aside. They like him and respect him. Most voted for him in 2020, but they want him to go."
And it was an incredibly shaky start for the president. Social media was lighting up about the first 20 minutes or so of his performance. And CNN is now reporting that Democrats are now starting to panic about it. It remains to be seen if it ends up backfiring on Joe Biden, agreeing to take this debate in June as we head into the November election.
I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated.
Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw wrote 10 minutes into the debate, and Biden has already apparently forgotten that 13 service members died in Afghanistan for one reason only: his orders to hastily withdraw without a plan. January, 3 U.S. troops were killed in a Shiite terror attack also when a drone struck a U.S. base in Jordan. The Border Patrol Union also called out President Biden for claiming that they endorsed him for president. The union quickly posted, quote, "To be clear, we never have and never will endorse Biden." The border crisis, a hot topic, with former President Trump calling out the rise in high-profile crimes involving illegal migrants who entered the country during the administration.
People are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. These 3 incredible young girls over the last few days, one of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old.
Two illegal Venezuelan migrants arrested for the murder of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary. They face capital murder charges and are each being held on $10 million bond. Yesterday, hundreds of loved ones and friends did pack a Houston funeral home to say goodbye to Jocelyn. There were so many heart-wrenching moments during the funeral, including one with Jocelyn's mother as she approached the casket and placed some white roses on it, preparing to say goodbye. In New York, an illegal migrant stands accused of killing a woman and dumping her body in a park. Authorities say the Ecuadorian national strangled Jocelyn Toaquiza to death just days before her 21st birthday. Shaka Buse Ilbis illegally entered the U.S. last year. An illegal migrant also charged with raping a girl in a separate case in New York. 21-year-old Sakir Akan faces first-degree rape charges. New York authorities say the Turkish national raped a 15-year-old girl last month. He illegally entered the U.S. last year and was released into the country under President Biden's border policies. And we now know the suspect arrested in the murder of 2 people in a Chick-fil-A is an illegal migrant. Outside Dallas, Texas, serving police say 37-year-old Mendoza Argueta shot the 2 victims at a restaurant Wednesday. He illegally entered the U.S. from El Salvador. Biden's performance last night causing a firestorm online with the hashtag #SwapOutJoe going viral. Former 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang posted that the Democratic National Committee should choose another nominee.
We've all had those nights. All of us, not one person watching, hasn't had those nights.
Well, we've not all been in presidential.
But it's not about debates. You have good moments, you have bad moments. You wake up the next day, you dust it off, and you move forward.
Some people are talking about Newsom being the next candidate, perhaps.
So wait a minute. Is he suggesting that they're going to put Gavin Newsom in place of Biden for president of the United States? Of course they are. Let's get into it.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I don't want you to write. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rule?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
Welcome to the Patriot Think Tank, everybody. And I wasn't on Thursday for obvious reasons. The debate was almost perfectly aligned with my broadcast, so I decided to not do it and just wait. Plus, I wanted to do some feedback on the debate. It took me a couple of days because there's a lot to chew on, and I got a lot to go over here. Ton of clips that I had to make, etc. So it was a trip. But before I get started, make sure you're clicking that subscribe button, follow button, depending on the platform that you're watching on. We're live on X. We're live on Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. So really, my particular one of choice is X. I'm trying to grow the following there. Last week we announced we hit the 200 mark, so we're just getting started here. But now we're at 245, 247 around there. So obviously the next target is 300. So let's help me get there. If you could take a second, in all of the descriptions on all platforms, there is a link to the X page that will take you right there. So I would appreciate that. And I'd also like some following on Rumble as well, which is the next best thing. So, and then also I always forget to do this, so I'm going to get it out of the way in the beginning. T-shirts that you see on the broadcast are available at my website, thepatriotthinktank.com. There is a link to my Etsy store on there, right on the front page up top, that you can go ahead and purchase any of the T-shirts you see. So right off the shoot, we got a comment from Stacy over on Facebook. The Democrats have to be scared of President Trump getting elected by the same standard. There'll be many arrests for treason, sedition, and 600 insurrections that have to be investigated. Yeah. So I don't know where the number 600 came from, and whatnot. There definitely will be a reckoning if Donald Trump wins the election. I should say when Donald Trump wins the election, especially after last night. But there are things that could throw a loophole into that, and I'll get into it in a little bit. So, but I appreciate your commenting, Stacy. Squall over on Facebook, lock and load. Yeah, absolutely. We're getting ready to take off here. And so, look, everybody kind of had the same reaction to the debate that I did, I think, right? Well, everybody but 30%, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Those of you who know how much I mention mass formation and conformity studies, how there's always that 30% that no matter what, they're so locked into the mass formation and what they've been, what's been burned into their brain that they will never deviate. And there's evidence of that went down on Thursday, and I'm going to get into that as well. But little by little, I want to kind of tear into some of this debate. I got a bunch of topics here throughout the debates, a lot of comments to make. Please make sure you're engaging as well. Let me know where you're watching from. I always like to know where everyone's watching from. Got a couple comments from England yesterday, letting me know they'll be following me on X. I was appreciative of that. We do have about 4,000 to 5,000 overseas folks that follow the Facebook page, where the majority of my following rests. But I'd like to change that. I'd like to get some more onto some of the more free speech platforms if we can. Here's in Northern California. There you go. MAGA deplorable. There we go. That's what we need. More MAGA deplorables. I'm on the southern side of the People's Republic of California, sir. But good to a Squall White. I don't know if that's your name or if that's that's a spin. Maybe you're a woman, but either way, I appreciate your being on. I appreciate your commenting, and hey, here's to both of us having to live in the People's Republic of California. All right, so the first glaring thing that jumped out about this debate, I think it's probably getting the most headlines. It's definitely one of the bigger screw ups on Biden's part, and it's not really a screw up. It's just a mental lapse, which we all know. Well, most of us knew beforehand, but apparently many have been educated upon just Thursday. Just figured it out Thursday. But it's when they were talking about the debt, and well, if you didn't see it, here's Biden's response. It's pretty ridiculous.
President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care.
Okay, so first of all, none of those numbers add up. I don't know if you actually took the time to do the math on the numbers he's throwing around, but it's complete gibber. It almost feels like he's making this stuff up as he goes along. The reality being, you're not going to resolve national debt through billionaires. It's just if you took all of the nation's wealth, period, and put it toward the debt, it wouldn't pay the debt. Forget 500 or 600 billionaires. It's just ridiculous. But it's the same narrative, right? And this is where and obviously we all know after watching the whole thing that Biden is not really all there. This is what his handlers told him. This was his answer. So, but that's not the best part. Let's try to make sense of what he says from here on forward.
Elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with.
Make every single person eligible for. Now, mind you, we're talking about the national debt. We're going to make every single person eligible for the thing I did. Dude's out of it.
Everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump. President Biden.
What is it, if we even where he was about to? I would have loved to have had more than a minute there, but this was the first. This one set Twitter on fire and set the internet on fire. But keep in mind, and I'm going to play this theme throughout. All right, and I did this in the ticker. This wasn't Trump's best moment either, by the way. But compared to what he was up against, I mean, it was a butt whipping, because if you don't crush this man in a debate, you shouldn't be there either, right? I mean, any of us could crush this man in a debate. But when you look at but you know what? Let me. Now I'm doing a Biden. I'm starting to drift off. Let me get back to this, because I have a lot of stuff here, and I knew that I was going to do this and start getting off topic. But in the end, this guy is a bumbling fool. Twitter was on fire. This whole thing, though, is not an accident, in my opinion. This entire performance, all of it, it's not like they staged the failure. They just knew it was going to happen. Everyone knew he was going to fail but Biden. His handlers knew he was going to fail. Everybody knew he was going to fail but Biden. And the media reaction to this, which I'll get in after I get through the clips, the media reaction to this was just more. I could do a whole episode. I might do a whole episode just on the media reaction to this, but it's clear what the narrative is now, and that's remove Biden. But let's go on. So they ask him about abortion, and he does it again. He starts talking about abortion, then it sort of morphs into immigration, and you're just left not knowing what the hell this guy's talking about. And by the way, I didn't take some of the Trump clips here, but I think we all know what they sound like, right? Like if he's talking about the border, it's the most secure border ever in the history of the United States, right? If he's talking about national debt, we had the best economy in the history of the United States, right? So it was a lot of that from President Trump, which is kind of standard. but it's the Biden stuff that really made the news, and it should have, because it was just a hot mess. So here's him on here's him on abortion, or is it him on
The
immigration?
idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that.
So he was talking. Wait, let's do this again, because
But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters,
there's a lot of women. So we started on abortion, morphed into immigrations killing citizens, and then came back to people getting raped by their brothers and so and it's still kind of talking about, it's still kind of on that immigration issue, but he tries to bring it back at the end. But it's like he goes into this conversation about immigrants murdering people, illegals murdering people and raping people, but then saying, well, it's not such a big deal because most people get raped by non-immigrants. Like that was his case.
It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
So I don't know if he's mad because they can't do anything about it without crossing state lines in many cases, because an immigrant raped them, or because someone's brother or sister raped them. Again, Biden really was struggling from the get-go here, but he, there are moments here that Trump struggled as well. And if he were up against a serious candidate, it would have hurt him. Okay. And nowhere more, you know how I am. I got to call it as it is, right? I got to call it as it is. So, and as much as we all know Trump smashed in this debate, there are things in here, and I have had my criticisms of Trump, and I will be voting for him for a third time, but that doesn't make him void of criticism. And one of the things that I always criticize him for is the situation in Ukraine. And I do leave it open that he may understand, but just doesn't. I try to leave it open that he understands why we're in Ukraine and what the purpose is, and not we're in Ukraine, why Russia is in Ukraine, and how that started, and what the reasons were, and what Russia's end goal is. But I don't know that I do. And here's why.
Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to stop before he even answers, because the answer to that question should be the unpopular yes. Those terms are absolutely acceptable. And the reason that those terms are acceptable, and Putin basically is telling everyone by saying this, and I'm surprised that CNN even acknowledged that he said that, because this might be the first time I've ever heard a leftist organization acknowledge that that's what Putin wants. And what he wants is a guarantee that Ukraine will not become a part of NATO. That's the reason that we're in there. And Trump has said in the past that he will end this thing in a day. And I had said I believe him, assuming he understands why Putin is in there, because he can. I mean, Trump, a president of the United States, can step up and just unilaterally say Ukraine will never be a part of NATO. And as far as letting them keep the territories they already have, well, Crimea, for one, wants to stay with the Soviet Union. So there's no foul there. It's only a fake narrative that the Crimeans do not want to be a part of the Soviet Union, part of Russia. They do, and they've been a part of Russia since the Soviet Union, and broke off when Ukraine broke off. But when it came time to go, they voted to go back to Russia. So the territories that Putin has are not. It's not ridiculous. Like it's not a ridiculous thing to say. We want to keep, and either way, you're not getting him out of those territories. So in the end, he's already there. And like I said, it's not like he's holding people against their will, or it's not like he's invaded them and now is doing. That's not the case. All right, so with those countries and the other, there are some other territories that he's taken or that he's seized or however you want to call it, annexed. But in the end, the people in those areas are not particularly upset. I'm sure. Look, it's going to be some diversity in there, but for the most part, they're not all that pissed off. Putin's goal is never to take over Ukraine. It never was. Never. It isn't now. It wasn't before, and it won't be in the future. And that's where I'm going to get into Biden's narrative on this, which is actually worse. But let's get Trump's first.
As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded.
And I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable?
Now, she's right to go back to her original question because he didn't answer it. But the fact is, where he went with that, he's right in one sense that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine if a different president, if himself, let's say, which I'm sure he's insinuating, was in office. That's true. The Ukraine thing never happens, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't not happen because Putin sees him as this great leader, powerful leader, and Biden as this weakling. It doesn't happen because Biden intentionally sent Kamala Harris out on a convoy or whatever you want to call it, to publicly start talking about bringing Ukraine into NATO. Like, this was completely, they knew what that would do. They knew what that would mean. There was no ambiguity there. You don't have to be Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State to understand what Russia's reaction to that was going to be. Russia does not want NATO in Ukraine. They don't want NATO on their border, period. They don't want them on their border. Right now, Ukraine serves as a buffer between NATO and I keep wanting to say the Soviet Union, between NATO and Russia. All right. He doesn't want to take over Ukraine because then he has that problem again. He's going to still he'll have NATO on his border in Poland. He doesn't want, the whole point is to keep conflict going on in Ukraine. Why? Because NATO can't get into it. As long as there's conflict going on, NATO cannot enter because then it will be an act of war. World War III will begin. It's not going to happen. Okay, so he wants Ukraine in conflict. That's what he wants, so that it's unenterable from NATO. And if you take that off the table and take NATO off the table, he'll pull out tomorrow. There's never going to be a moment where he tries to take over Poland or any NATO country. He wants a buffer. You don't have to be very smart to understand this. This has been going on for a very long time. He's literally laid down the terms that he's asking for to stop the conflict, and we will not agree. We will not just say you can't be in NATO. So understand the inflation, the groceries, everything you're dealing with today is all because of overspending, $200 billion of which has gone to Ukraine to support a war that literally is about whether or not Ukraine can be a part of NATO. Is that important to you? That's what you have to ask yourself. That's what you have to ask yourself. Yes, Putin has been talking about NATO in Ukraine for a long time. And a shout out to Leanda over on Facebook. Hi from Australia. So there's some of our overseas folks stepping up. Joe should be a resident, not a president. I bet the deep state plan another pandemic. No, they're planning to get rid of Joe. They want Joe out of there. They're coming to the conclusion he can't win this entire thing. He was poorly prepped. He was sent in without the dope that they put him on for the State of the Union address. They just threw him out there to look disoriented, as he is naturally at this stage of his life. They send him out there, and let him make a fool of himself so that even the mass formated can wake up. And I'll get into that more in a little bit. But thank you for commenting, Leanda, and thank you for watching over in Australia. All right. Let me, I think we have a little bit left here.
Acceptable to you, keeping the
No, they're
territory
not
in Ukraine.
acceptable. No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along.
Okay, and to point it out, he just said, he actually answered the question, said, no, it's not acceptable, which he should be saying that if he understands the reason we're there, he should be saying that is acceptable. Right, but to say it's not acceptable, I mean, Putin's not asking for much. He's really not. And if you understand how this whole thing started, it should be completely acceptable. That may not be popular to say, but if you understand the situation that's going on in Ukraine, that's how you end it in a day. And the fact that Trump seems to think he's going to end it in a day, and that's the only way to end it in a day, I have to believe that he knows better. I want to believe, I should say. But I can't say that because he, as great as he is in many other categories, he is not the most civics-minded person in the world and not the most current when it comes to, the reasons for things happening around the world. He sees things in very different terms sometimes, and this is one of them. So, all right, let me see here. Let's let him finish. I keep cutting off the president.
He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled.
So now he upped the ante. He said he would have it done the first day that he's president. Now he's saying he's going to have it done before it even happens. Again, totally possible. All right. I don't think most Americans understand how easy it is to end this conflict. And if you did understand it, it would piss you off even more when you look at the weapons money laundering that's been going on. And it's the same money laundering that goes on with Israel and everywhere else, right? We get involved in these situations and we're not sending them money, we're sending them weapons. Yeah. And what are the weapons? What are the weapons free? No. Israel, it's crazy to me that, so we give them billions in aid, we give them billions and billions, then we give them weapons, they use the billions to pay the weapons manufacturers for the weapons. That's how the money laundering takes place, in case you didn't fully understand that. And it's one of the reasons why they hate Trump so much, because he hasn't gotten us into, he's the only president in my lifetime that hasn't gotten us into any kind of major conflict. And the fact of the matter is, he didn't get us involved in anything. There was absolutely zero money laundering going on. I don't say zero, because there were already contracts or ongoing funding that I don't believe we were still dishing money to Israel. They were still spending it back to us in weapons. So there was still laundering going on, but no new laundering was created under his presidency. And that was a clear problem. That's a clear problem, right? For deep state. That's an issue. And it's something that's notable, right? It's something that's absolutely notable. And then here's Biden's take on Ukraine, which is the BS narrative that I just got done explaining was nonsense, but it's all he knows. So he's going to roll with it. And it's what the mass formated know, so they're going to roll with it. And they're going to talk about it like Putin's trying to go on some Hitler-like world conquest here. It's just nonsense.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries?
Absolutely nothing happens to those NATO countries. Absolutely nothing. It's what do you think, Joe? What do you think is going to happen to those countries?
And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point.
And there he is trying to make a distinction. We're giving them weapons. We're not giving them money. They're giving them money and they're giving them weapons. In the case of Ukraine, it's even worse. In the case of Ukraine, it's even worse than your standard money laundering operation that goes on with all these proxy wars. Like, we're just dumping everything into this place. In Ukraine's case, we're buying the weapons and then giving them money and giving them the weapons that we bought. Whereas in cases like Israel, we give them money, they use that money to buy weapons. But in this case, we're buying the weapons and we're giving the money. The only reason this could be desirable, there's two reasons. One, it's a WEF play, a globalist play, where because of the farming infrastructure and such, the fertilizer, etc., produced in Ukraine, which is enormous on the global supply scale, that they're trying to disrupt that for their food innovation hubs and all the other nonsense. Or he literally just wants to friggin' destroy the United States dollar. He's succeeding in both areas. And Squall, over on Facebook, I think Trump knows exactly what's going on. Never tell your enemies your plans. Yeah, I get that. But this isn't acknowledging the reason that we're there is not something that's like, ha ha ha, I got this secret plan. Like, everybody knows why this, not everybody, correction. Many people, every educated person on this topic knows why we're there. Acknowledging that the only person who I heard, and you guys know I love DeSantis, he screwed this up, he screwed the pooch on this one too. The only person that got this right was Ramaswamy. When asked this question about Ukraine and what he would do in Ukraine and he's the only one who directly and straightly said, that's the reason we're there. We're there because they don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. That is, I will come out and make that statement. This will end. He's the only person that said that. Every other candidate, pundit, politician, talking head, whatever, is on some other bizarre narrative. When it's so obvious that that's the reason all this is happening. It drives me nuts. But I get what you're saying. I want to believe that too, but I can't. Not in this case, because there's nothing secretive here. There's no secret sleeve here. Like, everyone can know that he understands why this is happening, and he can still say, "I'm going to have it over in a day," without saying that's what I'm going to do, and then go in and do that and be perfectly fine. Like, there's no secret sauce here. He could announce that he's going to do it today, go in and do it, and Putin will still get out of Ukraine. Because the bottom line is, he's telling you what, like Putin said, what it takes to get me out. And we all knew it beforehand, but now he's actually said it just for the dumb people in the back row who aren't hearing, right? For those people. But it just kills me that the Ukraine issue goes on the way it does. And look, every candidate's been failing on this issue except Ramaswamy, and I don't want Ramaswamy, but when it comes to speaking direct, when it comes to just hitting the nail directly on the head, and I know people can't, they question his background and his history and whatever. I don't know anyone that wasn't somewhat leftist when they were young, so you could probably do that to anyone. So, and he's right around that age where he should be turning around and making sense of things. Donald over on Facebook, Trump looks to solve issues speaking softly and carrying a big stick. I have never once before in my life heard Donald J. Trump accused of speaking softly. Carrying the stick, yes, but speaking softly? Now, Trump's strength is that he's unpredictable. His strength is world leaders don't know what he's going to, like if he turns around in a private conversation with a world leader and says, look, if you do this, I'm sending in troops and we're going to kick your ass. He could say that jokingly, but the other leader is thinking in the back of their head, he might be serious. And they can laugh about it together at the moment, but the other leader is still thinking, this guy, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. So there's that element of Trump that's that way. Brian Carroll over on Facebook, Ultra MAGA supporters forever, Trump 2024. Yeah, we got to be all in for Trump now, right? He's bigger. Trump is bigger than, and I posted not long ago, if you're not following the page, please make sure you are if you're not, but I posted a few days ago, maybe a week ago, Rasmussen reported, and I've said before, if you've been following the channel for a while, Rasmussen is the only polling agency that I respect. I think all polls come into question these days to some degree because of the nature of people answering those polls, etc. But Rasmussen has historically been, even when all the rest of these were off the chain crazy, like during the 2016 election, Rasmussen had Hillary and Trump neck and neck. All these other ones were saying Hillary's ahead by 7, ahead by 10. They were all shocked when it happened. Rasmussen was slow and steady the whole way, had them within the margin of error the whole way. And it's that way on a lot of things with Rasmussen. So they came out with Trump being 10 points ahead, and I was like, finally, because I don't get all their polls because you got to subscribe. But this one, like, made it public. They put it out there. They were reporting on it. So I went and looked it up, found it, put the screenshot and the link, by the way, in the post. So you can go look at the rest of the demographic breakdown of it. But it was 10 points ahead for Trump, with the black vote being 28%, which, if you're not familiar with how this works, if he gets 28% of the black vote, I don't even think they could fix it if they wanted to. Like if he gets 28% of the black vote, the election will be so impossible to fix. Like it would have to be on such a grand scale last time, but this time it would have to be on such a ridiculous scale that it would. There's no way there wouldn't be holes everywhere. So I mean, we'll see how that goes. But it's looking really good for Trump right now, although we need to see who the actual candidate that he's going to be facing it, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. NATO is Putin's issue with Ukraine, but there's much, much more going on there that involves a lot of American politicians, biolabs, money laundering, human trafficking. The list goes on and on. Yeah, the biolabs in particular, absolutely. Look, we've been using Ukraine. I get what you're saying, Squall. Like we've been using Ukraine as a proxy for more than just this proxy war. We've been using them for quite a few things. And the biolabs, yeah, they seem to have fallen off the newspapers, but the reality of the matter is that's still a thing. And we did have biolabs there, and we acknowledged it. First, we denied it. Then we said, well, maybe sometimes. Then we acknowledged we're really worried that they're going to accidentally blow up the biolabs. Like, why would we be worried about that if we're only doing, harmless research in there? Why would we worry? Well, we're worrying because we're likely doing more than that. And so, yeah, look, the United States government is no saint. And the fact of the matter is, we need to, this is why I advocate the Convention of States the way I do, because the federal government just needs to be beaten down to its knees. That's it. And there's only one power in this world that can do that, and it's the people of the United States. There's no other nation going to beat the federal government of the United States down to its knees. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Like China can steal as much technology as they want. Number one, they can't afford to make it in mass. And we roll out a new piece of tech, they roll out the same tech. Like, why do we allow that to happen? The dysfunctional nature of our federal government, where that used to be a ridiculous thing to think of, but now is commonplace, because communist nations don't innovate anything. So what they do is they infiltrate, they spy, they steal information, and they use it. But if no one's taking the federal government down to its knees except us. The American people are the only ones capable of doing this. And the only way the American people can do this, you're not going to do it through elections. You could elect 20 Trumps. It's not going to make a difference. The presidency doesn't carry that much weight. He's not going to be, like, the office itself, no matter how determined the person in it is. It's just, and even if you did, even if you got both houses of Congress and a supermajority, and you enacted all these great things, all of that can be easily overturned. Constitutional amendments cannot be easily overturned. They can be overturned, but not easily. And we all know that right now. Every time you cash a check, and it's for about, whatever, $1,000, $2,000 less than what you thought it would be because of income tax. Amendments are not easy to overturn. But thank you for the comments, Squall. All right, let's try and get on to the next piece here. So, border legislation. All right, so here's Biden. All right, and this is a point that I made the whole time that they were talking about this ridiculous legislation that they were trying to pass to secure the border, and then playing the blame game with the legislation. There's only the only problem with arguing about the legislation is that the President of the United States does not need legislation to secure our border. The laws are already on the books, and he is literally tasked with enforcing those laws. There is not one additional piece of legislation that needed to get passed to secure our borders. It's important. This is the civics lesson for everybody. I like to throw those nuggets in here. There is not one piece of legislation necessary. There is not an act by anyone other than God, perhaps. There is no act by anyone other than the President of the United States to secure the border. He has all the power and all the laws already on the books. He just needs to want to do it, and he didn't. And this idea that we were going to pass legislation, and I thought Trump was going to fail here. I thought he was going to fail on this one because it wasn't obvious. All right, but and I'll get into whether he did or not. But let's start with Biden.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch, overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants is causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because
okay, that was the whole clip. Sorry. Because after that, it just went on with more bumbling about the same thing. And again, no legislation is necessary. So Trump gets the opportunity to respond and says...
And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history.
Now, I wanted to give Trump points for bringing up that he didn't need legislation. But I wish he would have just left it there. He had to follow it up with, because I didn't need legislation. No, Donald. You didn't need legislation because the laws are already on the books. But at least he pointed out that he didn't need legislation. Trump kills me when it comes to this kind of stuff. I want to be like, go get him, and then he just follows up with something I was hoping he wouldn't say.
In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. And this guy
Did you guys catch that epic moment where the former president of the United States just told the current president of the United States to go F himself? If you didn't catch that at the time of the debate, I left it in for this clip because I wanted to hear it over and over and over again. Listen to this.
For president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. And this guy...
He said, Brandon, just speak to him. Like that. This is why there's no audience. Because that would have been a friggin' like, I don't know how many people caught that when it was said, but it took me a while to remember where he said it and find it, but he called him Brandon. Now, if you're not familiar, I don't know what rock you live on, but there is the famous "Let's Go Brandon" chant because of that NASCAR event where they were the news reporter was talking to the racer or whatever, and he was like, and the crowd started chanting "F Joe Biden," and she was like, you could hear everyone chanting "Let's go Brandon." Oh my God. And then it became a funny thing for everyone to be like, "Let's go Brandon," because it means what the crowd was actually chanting. And the former president of the United States just said it on a national debate stage to the current president of that was cojones. And it went by because there was no audience and no one really touched it. No one really talked about it after, but he said, Brandon, talk to him. I can't with this guy. All right, so needless to say, they had to go after Trump. They had to at least bring up the felony conviction. They spent so much money for this reason, to be able to talk about it in places like debates and to use it in ad campaigns. That's the only reason he was being convicted. And let's see how he addressed it. And I think he flipped it on him pretty good. And let's go.
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is standing on stage with you tonight. Can you clarify exactly what it means about you feeling you have every right to go after your political opponents?
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. my retribution is going to be a success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo.
And I couldn't let that go without putting the actual quote, because I know a lot of people don't realize this incredibly insane admission that he unconsciously made. And by the way, my shirt says Yuri was right, Renee. Yeah, so he says Yuri was right. So Yuri Bezmenov, who is the man you see right here, who explained to us in the 80s, there's a classic, you can get it on YouTube. There's a classic video of him being interviewed and explaining ideological subversion and what the Soviets had been doing ever since the Marxist movement in the early 60s to take over our schools, take over our Hollywood, take over Hollywood, infiltrate political institutions, etc. He lays the whole thing out, and then and you know, I always looked at it like, why don't more people know about Yuri, and why don't more people understand why things are the way they are today? But I wear this shirt outside, actually, and it's for sale, by the way, on my website. There's a link to my Etsy store. But it's amazing how many people come up and go, I don't understand, who's Yuri. They think it's like some teen trend thing. but yeah, that's what it says. But and then thank you. I got caught when you set it up straight. I tried to write it in, but misspelled Yuri. Yeah, you could find this shirt exactly is available on my website. There's on the top, there's a store link or a merchandise link that'll take you to the Etsy store. You can get it there. Of course, I never miss a moment for a shameless plug. Yes, and that's right, Donald. Mind warfare. That's exactly, those were his words, actually. Psychological warfare. But let me get to this Biden clip. So Trump just got done talking about, because they asked him about being a felon, and he turned it on Hunter, and really started turning it on Biden at the end, saying, when you're done, you could be in jail. Here's the stuff you did. And one of those things was there was a prosecutor in Ukraine, and if you remember, they were trying to connect Trump with this situation as well, because Trump was looking into it as president, and they accused him of trying to use it as a weapon. And what it is there was an attorney, or the government of Ukraine was investigating the shady company dealings of Biden's son, and Biden for that matter, in the dealings with China throughout those corrupt in Ukraine. And Biden insisted that they fire their attorney for this, and basically held $1 billion over their head that we had promised them in loan guarantees, and said, you're not going to get it unless you fire this attorney. So let's hear it from him.
I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
The guy just admitted, I could do a whole episode just on that, but he just straight out and casually in these talks goes ahead and talks about how he used the vice presidency of the United States office to strong arm the Ukrainian government into firing a prosecutor that was looking into the illegal dealings of his son, that he was clearly involved with, the big guy. So yeah, he absolutely can be in jail. I am not, look, I'm going to say this though. I hope look, I want to see a lot of people in deep state go down when Trump comes in for sure. I don't want to see President Biden arrested. I don't. And I realize that's not a popular opinion, but we don't want to go down that road. I'm telling you now, there's a reason why we never did this before. All right. And there's a reason why it really should never happen. The man anyway doesn't even know what he's doing. He's not the one he's not making these decisions. He's not making these calls anyway. But the fact of the matter is, if we start becoming South Korea, where every time a new president gets elected, the old one gets arrested and it's going to be a hot mess. Like some things you gotta take the high road, and the peaceful transfer of power is an important piece of what keeps this system going. And so get all the people in the DOJ, get every single other person. But because once you get the other people anyway, no president's ever going to be able to, like those people, next time a president tries to abuse something, are going to be like, you saw what happened to the rest of those guys? My attitude is put Rudy Giuliani as the head of the DOJ, put Ron DeSantis. Those are my top two dogs for the role, and let them just let go of the leash and let them have at it. Let them have at it. Throw all these guys in a pile of red meat, take off Giuliani's leash, and let him go at it. Because that to me is gonna, that to me is gonna be the way to go. So, all right. So let me. So we got the environment. So this one is another goodie. There's so many nuggets in this debate, and this is probably going to be one of my longer episodes. But I want to get through this part as quickly as possible because I got some points to make at the end that I hope you can stick around for regarding why this is all happening, why this went so bad. It's more than just him being demented. This is a part of something bigger, and I clearly said this. I'm sure I'm not the only one saying this. It's not exactly a rocket science revelation, but it is one that if you haven't thought of, you should. That I'd love for DeSantis and Giuliani to be let off the leash and just go get them all. Yeah, I agree. Because those two, look, I don't think DeSantis, obviously DeSantis would never take a VP position, but I don't think, I think the head of the DOJ, that's an executive position that I could see him taking. And, look, the guy knows how to get stuff. I think if anything DeSantis has shown us is he knows how to get stuff done, and Giuliani, just because of his legal mastery and such, like I would definitely, and his moral principles, I would love to see that guy on as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how that goes. So let's hear Biden on the environment.
He hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He pulled out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord. I immediately joined it because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back.
Because but the 1.5 degrees Celsius, there's no way back. No way back from where, Joe? No way back from where? If the polar caps melted completely, humanity would still be fine. We'd lose some coastline. It would happen slowly over the course of freaking 100 years, 200 years, and we'd still be fine. But 1.21 gigawatts. This guy is too much. But he goes straight to the Paris Peace. Now he's got me doing it. The Paris Peace Accords, the Paris Climate Accords, which Trump bailed us out of. All right, and Trump's going to explain why, and he's 100% right, and he absolutely should have done that. And Biden again. Would have worked with Biden's that guy, and he's not just him. It's all of there's Republicans like this too that take office, the rhinos like the Bushes and and whatnot, that they get into office and they think it's so important to just be everyone's friend, so important that they're willing to get suckered. They're like that kid at school that's got no friends and starts buying friends. Like it's just it's not a good look when you're representing the United States. So Trump's going to explain why he got out in just a second.
The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it. He wants to undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States, and I ended it because I didn't want to waste that money. Because
this is Trump at his best. This is Trump at his best. Just simply looks at something, realizes it's BS, and says, get rid of it.
because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones. It was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it. And it was a disaster.
It was a disaster. And it absolutely was a disaster, and he was right. We got Renee saying exactly, DeSantis knows how to get things done. Look what he's done for his state. He would be a go-getter for sure. Yeah, and what DeSantis has done for his state, really, more than anything else, is turn the state dark red. The state was forever, we all remember 2000, the state was forever a flippy flip state. You know, can we win Florida? Can we win? It's always by a few points. Florida's as red as the blood in my veins right now. It ain't getting any pink. It ain't getting any more purple. Right. And that's because he got everybody in the state legislature. All of these people rode on his coattails to get in office. And he's able to get things done because he's not dealing in this constant battle with the state legislature. They're all on the same page. These guys are writing it up, flipping it up to him. He's signing it. Bang, it's done. That's how it's getting done in Florida right now. And that's a huge attribute for a politician, to be able to get other people, other like-minded people to their agenda into office. You know, in his case, it's for the state. You know, if he runs after Trump for the presidency, you know, we're hoping he can pull that same magic with the Congress, right? And bring these people in with him. And he did that by letting people know during voting time, like, you can't just vote for me. If you want these things done, you've got to go across the board. Here are the people that we need. And everyone went and voted for those people. And he got them. And that's an enormous attribute. An enormous attribute. I mean, he killed his last election by 20 points in a state that used to be a swing state. That swing, the chains got cut off of that swing. Ain't nothing else swinging over there for quite some time. So as far as now, there are other things that were covered in the debate. They talked about, you know, what's been done for Black communities, they talked about child care costs. I didn't put that stuff in because I put in only the key points that I think. And the reason I didn't think what he's done for minority communities was a key point, because I'm a firm believer that if you do things for everyone, you're going to help those communities. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, it's a rising tides lift all boats type of scenario. It's just that in those rising tides, he ended up getting some great stats with minorities. But this pandering stuff of and Biden went on during that session to talk about all the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of other people's money that he's spending on programs that are just ridiculous, that sound great, have awesome titles, but we all know what happens to that kind of money once it gets authorized. It dissipates and dissolves. It all ends up in the hands of people that had no business getting it in the first place. So I had no interest in it, and I had no interest in the child care costs, because the federal government should not be subsidizing child care. The federal government should be trying to create a scenario by getting out of the way and allowing the free markets to just thrive, instead of constantly keeping us in these states of chaos, inflation, and everything. It's all government driven. All right. And the reality of the matter is, the government's job is to try and make sure that they're out of the way as much as possible, and that we can handle these things, because the cost of childcare, the cost of everything, comes down when that happens. I'm never a fan. I don't care how many heartstrings get pulled of the federal government. I passed a grant to add $250 billion into child care, subsidies. No, that's not your $250. You have no business trying to buy votes with it. Period. Give that money. You know what? If you're going to do that, give that money to a charity that handles that stuff. And I'd feel much better about that money getting spent properly than I do about some bureaucracy giving it out. So I left those things out, both for that and for the sake of time. But I did want to note the media. So I took a video with my phone, but I ended up not using it for this broadcast. But I had this I had this moment where I was watching the stats, right? Because immediately after the debate ended, the first thing I did was go to CNN. I was watching it originally on Fox. Didn't really matter where you watch it. It's just the debate is debate. But I was watching it originally on Fox. I didn't really watch any pre-stuff or whatever. But the post stuff, I immediately went to CNN. And it was, I mean, it was so much more entertaining than any of the wannabe conservative, the establishment conservative media like Fox or Newsmax or whatever else. CNN were just losing their minds. And I posted about this on Facebook, that I was trying to figure out if they were actually genuine about what they're saying. And thank you, Donald. I appreciate that. But were they actually genuine about what they were saying, or was it a situation where, this is all manipulation? And I really did come off with the feeling, when you see the heat and the passion that they're coming out, I mean, they're talking over each other. They just couldn't wait. The next one's lining up to bash. And I really believe that for the first time, they just finally realized that Biden is incompetent. And I've talked about this a lot on the broadcast, on previous broadcasts, regarding mass formation and Yuri Bezmenov and ideological subversion. And like one thing Yuri says, in that video is like, forget about them. Like the people that have been already indoctrinated, like forget about them. You're stuck with them. There's nothing you can do. You could take them. He's like, I could take them to the Soviet Union, show them the concentration camps, and they still would not believe that that's the end result. Like there's something psychologically triggered about it. And for the mass formation part, you can go back to my videos about the Matthias Desmet, who's one of the leading researchers for mass formation. And he was talking about it regarding COVID, as to why, you wonder why so many people engage in so many bizarre behaviors and are happy to do so. And it's because they're in this mass formation. Like, I don't want to get into the whole, you can watch that video for it, but it's basically once you get locked in, there are all these conditions that have to get met. And once you're in, you can't get out. And you're constantly, like when they tell you wear a mask when you sit down at a restaurant, or take it off when you sit down, wear it when you stand up. Do this napkin on your face is going to save you. All these weird freaking things that they tell people to do, and they do it because of this mass formation. And it's the media's reaction to this was showing me that they are in this mass formation. It's what I always suspected for some time. It's not as if there's this now up on the top of the media chain, yes, but the talking heads that are just out there are the names and faces that you see and like they believe this stuff. And so when they saw him so feeble, and they saw him so humble and just lost, they were absolutely stunned by it, and they melted. They were melting. And here's the thing. They're pawns just like everyone else that buys into these narratives. And the fact of the matter is, in my humble opinion, this entire thing was staged. They had no intention of allowing Joe Biden to run. We've been theorizing for a long time that it would be Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom or whatever, that somebody was going to get chosen to step in at some point, and then they let him run. And everybody was kind of like, I don't get it. But at the same time, now you get it, right? Because they want to do it this way. When have you seen a debate before the primary, right? So that's what this is. And this is going to, and effectively what the Democratic Party will likely do again, they just did this to Bernie Sanders in 2 cycles ago. They'll do it again right now, is just snatch the vote from the Democratic Party voters and appoint their own candidate. And that's what you're going to see. And it's very good chance it'll be this guy.
We've all had those nights. All of us, not one person watching hasn't had those nights.
Well, we've not all been in presidential.
But it's not about debates. You have good moments, you have bad moments. You wake up the next day, you dust it off, and you move forward.
And some people are talking about Newsom being the next candidate, perhaps.
Yeah. So they're already talking, like the media's. Now, here's the thing, right? You say, well, how could they not realize what they're doing? A lot of these folks in the media that you're watching don't write their own material. They literally just go up there and start reading stories that are thrown in front of them. And so, which brings me to my next point about the fact that they're allowed to say illegal migrants now. I do recall it wasn't too long ago in the State of the Union address where the President of the United States had to apologize after the fact for using the term illegal immigrant. But now, and by the way, these clips are all from the same broadcast. It's not even like I had to go fishing around. I went and saw a bunch of others, but they were all encapsulated in this one broadcast where they went on talking about. So this woman, and I'll show you about the being able to say illegal migrant now. So the context that she said it in is even more important, because this was a 15-minute clip that was on YouTube, which is obviously aired on national television, and it was just bashing Joe Biden and setting the stage. Like, everything right now is about the narrative. The people are demanding Biden out. The people are demanding Twitterverse is demanding Biden out. The hashtag, Go Biden or whatever it is now trending. Like, this is what you're seeing all over the place immediately after the debate. And the fact that, the context that she uses this illegal migrant in, because I only got the clips of her using the term, and I had it in the ticker as well, and I had it repeat like 3 times each one that she said illegal migrant. But like, this was unheard of a week ago. They would never use the term. Humans aren't illegal, right? That was how much grief you would get for saying illegal immigrant when they're clearly illegal. But now it's okay. And why is it okay? Because now they're trying to point out bad things about Joe Biden. So now suddenly they care about the migrant stories of them murdering American citizens, which has been going on forever, which they have not been reporting at all. All right, minimally, they've been reporting, right? Like, you may get like a 2-second report on it, and that's it. Now they're showing the funeral. They're showing how sad it is. They're even saying under Biden's border policy. Listen. I put a few together. These all came in one broadcast right after playing a clip of President Trump, accusing Biden of allowing these murders to take place. Right after they show that clip in the series of "Let's Dog Biden" moments in the broadcast, they went ahead and started going off with the illegal aliens. I couldn't take it. Listen to this.
In New York, an illegal migrant stands accused of killing a woman and dumping her body in a park. And we now know the suspect arrested in the murder of 2 people in a Chick-fil-A is an illegal migrant. 2 illegal Venezuelan migrants are arrested for the murder of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary. They face capital murder charges and are each being held on $10 million bond. Yesterday, hundreds of loved ones and friends did pack a Houston funeral home to say goodbye to Jocelyn. An illegal migrant also charged with raping a girl in a separate case in New York. 21-year-old Sakir Akan faces first-degree rape charges. New York authorities say the Turkish national raped a 15-year-old girl last month. He illegally entered the U.S. last year and was released into the country under President Biden's border policies.
Under President Biden's border policy. You see, this is CNN, folks. Okay, this is CNN. Let's just wrap our heads around this, okay? Like all of a sudden, CNN is pointing out the border crisis and the deaths of innocent Americans at the hands of illegal immigrants and calling them illegal immigrants and highlighting the fact that it's under Biden's border policy. Yeah, Biden's out, folks. He's out. He was always going out, but now it's official. The dude's out. It's a matter of time now. So now you got to start thinking, all right, what about Newsom if Michelle if Big Mike jumps in? I laugh so hard at those memes. If Michelle jumps in, what are we looking at, right? Now, I don't think it makes a difference, but it's something that's worth noting. If you haven't figured out, Biden was never going to be the candidate. The only person that didn't know that was Biden. The only person shocked right now is Jill and Biden himself, if he even comprehends what just took place. And the fact of the matter is, though, Jill's deal with the devil, this sick mission she's been on, dragging her husband around for the sake of the White House, dragging her husband around like a circus animal all over the globe, when he clearly should be getting taken care of, from a medical perspective for obvious dementia. Yeah, whatever check she cleared to sell that soul, whatever it was worth, it's time to collect. It's time to collect. It's over for you, sweetheart. It's over for you. She'll bring Hillary in and then run for California governor after they install Newsom as VP. I got a really bad feeling about all this. Yeah, there's no Hillary. You're saying bring Hillary in for the presidency? No, they're not doing that. Everybody hates Hillary. Everybody hates Hillary. Even the devil doesn't want Hillary. Like Hillary's just there's no way they let that woman run again. I could have told you that woman would have lost to anybody she ran against the first time. She is just the worst person for today's political climate on both sides of the aisle. She's the worst. But we'll see. And you think Newsom will be VP? Look, Newsom got his head handed to him by DeSantis. And at the time that happened, I was like, I don't think they're even going to bother with this guy anymore. But they don't really have a lot of options, right? Like my brother was telling me he thinks it's going to be Newsom. I was like, I don't think so. But the more I think about it, he might be right, because who else are they going to put up there? It's really either him or Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama will get eaten alive. She'll get eaten alive in this type of environment. It's just she doesn't want any part of it from what they say. You know, we don't know. She may come in and go, I really didn't want to do this, but the country needs me so much. Like, you may get one of those. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I don't know that it'll be her. Right now, the one who wants it and has a shot is Gavin. So we'll see. But again, just looking at what he's done to California, I can't imagine anybody sane, giving any credence to anything that guy says. So I thought, I do. So I wanted to bring this one point and then, I'll try and wind it down. But of course, if there's more comments, leave them up. We can get into the comments. But one other point that I wanted to make up was just, I keep hitting this home in many, many videos because I really want people to start thinking this way. And I talk about these conformity studies. You can look up Solomon Asch, his conformity studies, his classic one with the 3 lines, but there were dozens of versions of them that have been done over the years. And the study, just to sum it up, was there were 3 different lines of 3 different sizes, and on the first board, and on the second board, there were 3 different lines of 3 different sizes. One of those lines was identical to one of the lines on the first board. And they had eight subjects. 7 of them were on the take. They were in on it, and 1 person who wasn't. And they were asked which line is the same, A, B, or C, from the second board. And the right answer, let's say, was A. So everybody, all 7 people said B. And they wanted to see what the 7th person would say. Would they conform because everybody else was given the wrong answer? Or would they stop and go, no, that's not right, it's A. I know it's A, and go with that. So long story short, they came to these numbers that I talk about all the time on the broadcast. And the numbers are, in the end of the experiment, it generally came down, and these are rough over the course of all these different versions of the experiment that took place, but it generally came down to about 30% of the people, even after they were told that they're wrong, that it's A, and even, they pick B because everyone else did, they still insist that they're right. Like, they've already made the decision to conform to everybody else, and they still insist, even though they're being told by the researcher, like, look, dude, this was the study. You're wrong. Like, we did this on purpose. No, those are identical. I can see it clear as day, right? That's 30%. And then there's another 30% who clearly said, even though the other 7 people said different, they went, no, it's A. I don't know what the hell, where'd you find these people? It's A, right? And then you got 40% in the middle, and that's the 40 I always talk about. It's this 40% in the middle who knew that it didn't make sense and it seemed stupid, but they gave the wrong answer anyway because of a variety of reasons. They didn't want to make waves, or they thought maybe they were wrong because everybody else said otherwise. Whatever their story is, they knew the right answer and decided to give the wrong answer anyway to conform with the group. And here's, and it's that 40%, right, that I always say are the problem in this country. That 40%, they're fall compliance with everything because they don't do politics, they don't want to be bothered, they just want to be left alone. Those people, okay, their complacency makes the crazy 30% think that 70% agree with them, right? But on another note, I always keep mentioning those numbers, and it's that 30%. When I talk about how many people are actually Marxist and how many people are actually like these crazy people that you keep seeing on TV, and I always say the number's around 25 to 30%. And I base it on that conformity study because you can't be a conservative, an actual free-thinking conservative. Like, if you're a Mitt Romney conservative, you could be, but you can't be an actual free-thinking, questioning, beating up the Republicans just like anyone else type of conservative, unless you're free-thinking, because you can't be in a mass formation for that to happen, because everything is geared to make you think the other way. The media, Hollywood, politicians, the global landscape, social media, everything is designed to make you think the other way. Now, the question is how many people fall for that? Well, my point was, and I make it all the time, 30% of the country will likely fall in hook, line, and sinker and be those unsavable ones, as Yuri says. And so they took a poll right after I'm going to show you this clip. They took a poll right after the next morning, and the poll was asking, who do you think won the debate? And the numbers, because no one in their right mind, no one who's sane can think that Biden won that debate. Even if you can't stand Trump to your very core, you can't possibly think that Biden won that debate. But then here we are.
More post-debate fallout for the president. According to a CNN flash poll, these are the numbers we want you to look at this morning. Only 33% of registered voters said President Biden produced a better performance. Compare that to the 67% who said former President Trump did in that debate.
33%. Margin of error, usually about 3%, 3 to 4%. So it's spot on, right? And if you look at that question, you probably ask yourself, how could anybody think, how could there be 33? But that's that 33%. These are the 33% that get angry with people. These are the 33% of people, they wear masks in their car. They get angry with people for not wearing masks. They get angry with people for non-compliance. They get angry with people for just about everything. It's that 30%. And my appeal to everybody who watches this broadcast is don't be that 40%. Now, that 40% doesn't reflect in this poll. Why? Because there's no pressure here. There's no inconvenience, right? That 40% would easily break off if they were in any way inconvenienced or in any way had to take a stand on something. And I urge that 40% to stop that stuff. Cut that crap out. The days of I don't do politics are over, because they can either end now for you willingly or they can get ended for you if this all goes bad because you decided you don't do politics. Start paying attention, start following what's going on, start asking questions. There are a lot of questions to be answered, and it's time that we got our answers. Many of us have been getting those answers through podcasts like this or the big guys, whatever it may be, the Bonginos and whatnot, and the Tuckers, and that's fine too, whatever works. But ask questions. We've already known that their capacity to lie to us is very evident, and they have no interest in hiding it. They have no interest in hiding it. So it's on us to ask questions. And that's same thing with convention estates. If you could watch this video, if you made it to this point, and I ask you, what do you know about an Article 5 convention estates? And you tell me nothing. I'm not mad at you, but I am asking you to what the hell you're doing, because that's the only, and you can follow this channel, right? You can follow this channel and follow Convention Estates Project on YouTube, where you can get actual, like on the moment type of deals when stuff pops. But Article 5 convention estates is the process of calling a convention. All right, it's one of two processes for amending the Constitution. The first one we all know, 2/3 House, 2/3 Congress, 3/4 of the states ratify, right? The Congress proposes, the states ratify. The second clause doesn't involve the federal government at all. And the founders put it there for this specific moment in history. Literally. For that moment in history, they didn't know when it would come, but they knew it would come, where the federal government just went off the rails and stopped caring about what the people want. And right now, the federal, and becomes so structurally broken, which it is right now. We cannot elect our way out of the problems we have right now. We're not electing our way out of a $36 trillion deficit. It's not going to happen. It needs to be in the Constitution with teeth, right? A balanced budget amendment with teeth. Like you either don't spend more than you take in, or you can't run for office again. Like that kind of teeth, right? And now your insider trading days are over and the money tap stops, right? Those kind of teeth. Term limits, done, right? If they legislate term limits, they'll just unlegislate term limits. It needs to be in the Constitution. And we could do this, the state, instead of 2/3 of the House and Senate, proposing the amendments, it's 2/3 of the states petitioning for convention, selecting delegates, and sending them to the convention on specific topics to be discussed. It has to be 34 states that are on board with those topics. Every resolution has to be the same. We've got 19 resolutions already passed, 20 hearing it right now, but the only problem is you don't know what the hell it is. So you're definitely not contacting your local legislator to tell them that you want this done, and that if they don't get this done, you're going to replace them. All right, and this is how this is how our government, this is how our republic was designed to operate, from the bottom up, local governments. Right, but we can go right now. The 3 topics, all right, are term limits, fiscal restraints, and amendments on government overreach, mostly to address regulatory agencies. But there are other things like single subject bills and stuff like that that we can get through as well. This process has to be completed, folks. Has to be. It absolutely has to be completed, even if only a handful of the amendments I pray for get through. Why? Because it changes fundamentally the relationship between us and the federal government forever. Donald Trump cannot fix these things. No one can. Donald Trump can fix the border situation. That's right in the president's wheelhouse. There are things that he can do, and we need him to do those things, but he cannot fix the existential problems with this country. He cannot end the threat of Marxism in this country. We can. Right? Do we need amendments on privacy rights versus technology? Absolutely. Absolutely. You think the government's going to pass those? No. Never. You think the federal government's going to propose term limits? Never. You think they're going to propose fiscal restraints? Never. And you think they're going to propose anything that weakens their power? No. It's our job. And I'm not going to go crazy about it now because we're at the end of the broadcast, but I will tell you this. You should be, if you're not already, you should be over at conventionestates.com. There's a link on my front page as well. If you're over there buying a t-shirt, if you're over there buying a t-shirt, you can click the link from there as well. That'll take you right to the petition. You click it, you click volunteer, and someone local to you, like in your neighborhood local to you, will reach out. All right, there are district captains for every district in this country. That's a lot of captains. All right. And they will let you know what's going on in your local government that you could do locally to get this ball moving, because that's the real reason for this channel to exist. That's the real reason why I'm here. It's the only solution, folks. And as you learn about it, and they will force you to learn about it, they don't want you just going out and just blabbing off at the mouth and screwing stuff up. They want you to understand what you're talking about, which is a great thing about how they operate. And the fact is, you can come on with me any Thursday, anytime I go live, anytime someone has a question on it, I absolutely will stop whatever broadcast I'm on to make sure that I answer that question on Article 5. It's not the UN Article 5. It's Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. All right. All right, let's get into some of these. Brian Kroll, I wish Trump would pick Mark Robinson from North Carolina for his VP. Yeah, you know what? I don't want to say I don't care who he picks for his VP. I don't want to say that, but I don't care. Look, in the end, I want him to pick somebody. I don't want it to be like a Kamala Harris or a Biden type pick where, everyone's like it's an insurance policy, like don't kill me or this person's going to be president, right? I mean, that's why Biden got picked, right? And that's why Kamala got picked. Because it's like, no matter how bad I am, this is what's backing me up, right? So, it is what it is. Let me see this here. Donald says, Squall White, the only way to put Newsom in is for Biden to step down, but then they have to deal with Kamala. They're going to remove Biden. Don't get it twisted. The stage is already set. Every news organization, every leftist news organization in the country is already setting the stage to have Biden removed. They're almost talking like they're pro-Trump in order to make Biden look incompetent. Like they need him to look as incompetent as possible. And this debate, which really was just a flaw in my opinion, but this bad showing by Biden was not an accident. It was not an accident. Whatever drugs they gave him for the State of the Union, they made sure they didn't give him this time. I didn't know that it would make the speaker the vice president. Thanks for helping me understand that. but still, all right. I'm getting into other people's conversations. The thing about my chat is that like people are talking back and forth with each other, and I'm like, it's popping up here as if it's a comment. So, but I'll comment on it anyway. What the hell? It's on my. But yeah, the speaker. So apparently Donald just helped out Squall, learning that the speaker is, if you folks didn't know, the third in line. So right, so the 2 heartbeats away from the presidency. Right, so it would be if there were some disaster, and I don't wish death on anyone, but if for some reason there was a passing of the president and vice president, it would be our current rhino in the House who would be taking over, which doesn't give me much more reassurance than Kamala, to be honest with you. All right. So on that note, folks, I just want to say thank you all for watching. I appreciate you jumping on a Saturday. I would like to continue to do Saturdays. It's easier for me, but I didn't do Thursday this week because it was the debate, and me coming on a 5:30 debate starting at 6. I don't want to talk to myself. Right? So on that note, folks, I'll see you next week. Always feel free to hit me up on Twitter. If you haven't followed me already on X, please go ahead and do. I'm trying to grow that following. My next target is 300. So unlike the 18,000 on Facebook, we're trying to get that number on X, but the migration is not as easy as it may seem, as I have to prove to X independently that my content is worth watching. So every time you guys comment, watch there, or anything else, it helps me, right? It's a free way that you could help me to help grow the channel and help get the message out. All right, folks, until next time, I'm out.
And like that, gone.
All right, that's not how it was supposed to work. Let's try this again.